spells where temperatures may just dip away, perhaps even some patchy frost across the north by the morning. Most towns and cities, though, remaining above freezing and largely dry for many areas, but quite a different story across western parts of Scotland. Still plenty of showers moving through here, merging into longer spells of rain at times. And once again, these could be heavy, perhaps even bring a sprinkling of snow across higher ground. Fairly similar across Northern Ireland, a fair few showers moving into coastal regions and similar towards coasts of northwestern parts of England. But elsewhere, a largely dry start away from the far southeast, though, where we could just see some longer spells of rain through the morning, once again turning a little bit heavy at times. This will eventually clear away and we'll see a continuation of the showers moving through into the northwest. And for a time, there's going to be lots of dry weather around, but into the afternoon, a fair few showers once again bubbling up across the rest of England and Wales. And still a little bit breezy around northwestern coasts, but elsewhere lighter winds, plenty of dry weather and also some sunshine and a slight dip in temperatures compared to today, but still above average for the time of year, highs around 10 to 11 Celsius. A different story on Wednesday, another unsettled day ahead, longer spells of rain skirting their way eastwards across the country, heavy at times, once again bringing in a risk of thunder and turning into quite a windy day too, particularly around exposed coastal areas, but high pressure building towards the end of the week, which means lots of dry weather on Thursday and Friday and even some sunshine, but it will be turning cold overnight with some morning frost.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Big problems in Lancashire heading north up the M6 just before junction 31 and the A59. Of course, east of Preston, a lorry has broken down, so recovery work continues. And there are still residual delays on the M40 heading south over the border out of Warwickshire into Oxfordshire. About a mile north of the Banbury turn, junction 11. A lorry was involved in an accident, then careered off the road into a ditch and has left a large spillage behind. So the clean-up operation continues, closing off the inside lane. In Lincolnshire, the A52 at Sutton-on-Sea, that's still closed after a water main burst. And we're just hearing on the M4 in Wiltshire, the westbound exit is partly blocked at junction 50 near Swindon following a collision. And in Essex, the A13 is closed London bound at the Pitsea flyover. 2 cars and a lorry involved in an accident, causing long queues back towards Southend-on-Sea. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. Hurry, lines close on the 7th of March. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. 1 entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good evening to you. It's Monday the 24th of February at 7 p.m. and this is GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. On the show tonight, Mike Amesbury, the ex-Labour MP, is about to go behind bars. No, he's not. He's been sentenced to 10 weeks in jail. But is this outcome another example of two-tier policing in Britain? And Elon Musk has sent shockwaves through the US government by demanding to know what the federal employees achieved this week, or they're fired. And the German election fallout continues with the AfD, Alternative for Deutschland, making serious gains and Olaf Scholz's party suffering their worst results in decades. What's next for Germany and indeed the rest of Europe? And live pictures on your screen now. There is Anne Widdecombe. That's at the Reform UK conference in Cornwall. Nigel Farage is about to address members down there, and we'll bring you that live as and when it happens. But first, is your latest bulletin. It's Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. US President Donald Trump says he's in serious discussions with Vladimir Putin over ending the war in Ukraine. That's as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says, "We hope that we can finish this war this year, not in 3, on the 3rd anniversary of Russia's invasion." To mark the milestone, President Zelensky has been hosting leaders at the Support Ukraine Summit in Kyiv. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer earlier spoke at the event on a virtual link from Downing Street.
Is echo in my ears. They inform decisions that I take and the peace that I believe that we must see. So I have a very simple, clear message today. The UK is with you today and every day. From His Majesty the King to the NHS workers volunteering in hospitals in Ukraine.
President Trump has welcomed French President Emmanuel Macron to the White House today. It's the first one-on-one meeting between the pair since the US president re-entered the White House. Donald Trump also says he spoke to a group of G7 leaders today alongside President Macron, noting that everyone on the call expressed the goal of seeing Russia's war in Ukraine end. Mr. Trump and Mr. Macron are due to speak shortly. Elsewhere, former Labour MP Mike Amesbury has been jailed for 10 weeks after he admitted punching a man to the ground in his Cheshire constituency last October. He now faces calls to quit the Commons. Amesbury pleaded guilty to assaulting 45-year-old Paul Fellows after video footage emerged showing the confrontation. His sentence triggers a recall petition. If 10% of his constituents sign it, a by-election will be forced. Delivering the sentence, the magistrate said Amesbury's unprovoked drunken behaviour was too serious to be dealt with by unpaid work. The Vatican says the Pope is slightly improving in health, but he remains in a critical condition. This morning, the Vatican issued a short statement saying the pontiff was resting in hospital and the night went well. The updates on his health follow a statement yesterday in which the Vatican said the pontiff was in a critical condition and was showing an initial mild kidney problem. The 88-year-old has been in Rome's Gemelli Hospital since the 14th of February and is being treated for double pneumonia and chronic bronchitis. And Nigel Farage has hit out at Sir Keir Starmer, saying Labour's getting desperate after the Prime Minister accused the Reform UK leader of perpetuating what he's calling dangerous right-wing politics. Mr Farage is speaking to members in Cornwall any moment now. In a major speech at the Labour conference in Glasgow yesterday, the Prime Minister condemned Reform's, quote, dangerous policies.
A dangerous right-wing politics, even here in Scotland, that will say they are the ones who can tilt politics towards the interests of working people. They claim to be the party of patriotism, but they're fawning over Putin. No, they are not the answer for working people in Britain.
And those are the latest headlines for now. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, as you may have seen, Mike Amesbury, the former Labour Party MP, was sentenced to 10 weeks in prison today. He is behind bars. The MP for Runcorn, they call him the Runcorn Rocky, he admitted to punching a man to the ground, a constituent, during a night out in his constituency. Now, the Labour Party have disowned Mr Amesbury, suspending him from the party and releasing a statement today saying that the people of Runcorn deserve better in the form of a new Labour MP. Now, the custodial sentence has opened the door for a recall petition, which would trigger a by-election if 10% of his constituents were to sign it. However, shouldn't Amesbury do the decent thing and simply resign? Well, that's the first topic in tonight's show, and I'm joined by GBNews' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and the former spokesman for Reform UK, Gawain Towler. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Nigel, we're going to start with you. Isn't it ironic how Sir Keir Starmer said at the weekend it's Reform UK who are dangerous? You know, it was a Labour MP who chinned a constituent. Yeah, he chinned him to the ground, he punched him 4 times when he was down, and now he's behind bars.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's an unfortunate combination when Keir Starmer says that and Mike Amesbury goes to jail. I am sorry about what happened to Mike Amesbury. He's one of the gentlest men I've ever come across. Clearly, he's not that gentle when he's in drink, but I was terribly surprised he behaved the way he did. However, the sentence is right that he should go to prison for something like that.
Well, is it 10 weeks? You've got people that were getting 2 years for a Facebook post.
Yeah, but you can't really compare.
Why not?
Well, because you can't compare crimes. No, hang on. You can't compare crimes. For instance, that burglary is double the sentence of theft, and that's right. Because you're not comparing them. You have different sentences for premeditated murder and manslaughter. So
come on, 10 weeks in jail.
If anything, it was harsh.
For clumping someone to the ground repeatedly, hitting them when they're down, prostrate on the deck, while intoxicated, versus 2 years for a Facebook post. This is more two-tier justice.
Yeah, but I mean, the way that the justice system works is you look at the harm or potential harm a crime can cause. You look at the effect on the victims.
You could have killed him. One punch can kill him.
I appreciate that, but you're trying to compare 2 crimes which are not like for like.
But they are like for like. OK, but in the eyes of the electorate, Gawain Towler, it does send out that message, one rule for thee, one rule for me. I digress. Let's talk about the fallout. What could happen next? It looks, by all metrics, this may well trigger a by-election. Do you think that the dangerous politics of Reform UK could be a danger for Keir Starmer? There ain't no such thing as a safe seat. Could Reform win there?
I think it's a big ask. It's a huge hill to climb. I mean, it's one of the safest seats Labour have got. I know it's a 30-point majority over Reform. It's a big ask. But you never know. I mean, they've been starving pensioners. They've been causing all sorts of... or freezing pensioners, sorry, but they've been causing all sorts of trouble. They've been rejecting their own working-class vote. And now they have an MP who decks his own working-class vote. So, frankly, it's all to play for, but it's still a huge ask. That's a mountain. But going back to what Nigel was saying about sentencing... Joe Punter, us, the bloke on the Clapham Omnibus, they look at sentencing and see the seriousness of a crime related to its sentence.
Yes.
So 6 weeks, 2 weeks, 5 years, 10 years. That is a sliding scale of seriousness to us. And the justice is our justice. It's the King's justice. It is not political justice, or should not be. And this idea, it's like different crimes, different things. Yeah, they are different crimes. Burglary and theft, robbery and violence and things of this sort. But we put a tariff on them as we see them as serious. And the idea that you have different tariffs, and it doesn't matter if it's 2 years here for dirty words on a Facebook post and 6 months here for something else.
The justice system doesn't work that way.
Well, it doesn't work like that. But if it is, who is it serving? If it's serving the public, then surely it has to work that way.
No, it's serving justice. That's the important thing. And so similar crime... There is a
justice is supposed to be blind.
There is a sentencing council where similar crimes are then judged to have similar sentences across the country, which is right. When they are different crimes, you have a completely different sliding scale.
Aggravated crimes. And to be fair, in this case, there is a little bit of pour encourager les autres. This man was an MP. So therefore, his responsibility is greater.
Which is why the sentence was actually stiffer than it would have been if it had been an ordinary person.
What, so you're saying then that 10 weeks was actually a harsh sentence?
Yes, I am.
For chilling somebody
yes,
and repeatedly
I am.
raining blows on their skull when they were down from an elected representative. How is 10 weeks soft justice?
It's because he was an elected representative. He got as long as he did. The point the judge was making was he is there to set an example. He is an MP, and part of that sentence was to do with the fact about the fact he was an MP.
One last point on this. Well, I understand that he's going for an appeal. I know it was discounted today, but there's going to be an appeal. From what I understand from people within the Labour Party talking, he knows he's going down. He knows that he's being kicked out. He knows there's going to be a recall petition. But if he pushes the appeal back, then it takes 6 weeks to get the OK for the recall. Then it takes a certain period for the recall. He's doing this because he wants to pay his mortgage. He is hanging on with to grim death to stay in that role, to keep that job title, so that he continues being paid. And that is outrageous.
And Nigel, that brings us to the next point. Zia Yousaf and Kemi Badenoch united in saying, do the honourable thing and resign from the post. Now, do you think that's going to happen? Look at Fiona Onasanya, the MP for the Labour Party in Peterborough, who wasn't even driving, who was driving but said she wasn't, and she refused to go out. Claudia Webber, again, Labour Party MP for Leicester East, bullying her members of staff, and an allegation of an acid attack. Neither of those resigned. There's no chance of Mr Amesbury doing the right thing. I put it to you, all this stuff about dangerousness and morality in politics has severely come back to bite Sir Keir Starmer on the backside with the case of Mike Amesbury.
He should resign. I mean, Labour have made it absolutely clear that they would like him to resign. That's what he should do. Obviously, it's up to him while the appeal process goes on, because they can't do the recall petition until that appeal process is complete.
Another few months on the taxpayers' tick. Great.
OK, now we're going live to Cornwall, because that is in Redruth. This is the Reform UK conference, and that is Nigel Farage there approaching the stage. The usual rock and roll entrance we've come to see as the normal. Nigel Farage about to take the stage, and we believe a sellout crowd there. And interesting to bring you back in, Nigel Nelson, before Mr Farage speaks on stage. Talking about dangerous party, there were masked hoodlums outside greeting the Reform Party this afternoon.
Yeah, well, I obviously wasn't there, so I haven't actually seen who was outside. If people were demonstrating in a violent way, they should be dealt with.
It was Antifa. Masked men in black masks. And they kicked off. But we are seeing intimidation up and down against the country, against our candidates, against our events. And we're the dangerous guys. No, it's the hard left that are dangerous, not us.
I mean, it is not acceptable for violence to happen at political events.
OK, well, let's hear what Nigel Farage has to say now. We're expecting him to respond to those comments from Sir Keir Starmer, calling Reform UK the dangerous party and also a right-wing party. Nigel Farage has made it clear in advance of this event he's going to respond to those comments, and perhaps even he'll take a swing, pun intended, at Mike Amesbury.
Good evening, Cornwall. I've just returned from the United States of America, where something quite remarkable is happening. They had an election on November the 5th, and they've got a new president. Chap who's a friend of mine, Donald J. Trump, is now their president. And he's decided, and he's acting already, they're going to get rid of waste and fraud within government, with Elon Musk leading the charge. What a good idea. He has decided that 6'3" people who were born male, who have lunch boxes that will make Linford Christie jealous, will no longer be competing in female sports. He has decided that nobody that enters America illegally will be allowed to do so, and the deportation flights have started already. And his deputy, his Vice President, J.D. Vance, came and shocked European leaders a couple of weeks ago. In fact, the reaction to his speech reminded me a bit of my old days in the European Parliament, where what I said never went down very well. He said that free speech was under threat in Europe. And just today we learned that Channel 8 in France, a centre-right leaning mainstream TV channel, is to have its licence withdrawn. Vance was right. But that attack on free speech also happened tonight here in Camborne. What you saw outside this hall this evening was an organisation called Antifa. They are hard left communist political actors who were intent on shutting us down, intent on this exercise in democracy that is happening here in Cornwall tonight. They were intent on shutting it down. Well, let me give a message to Antifa. Let me give a message to two-tier Keir Starmer. Let me give a message to all of them. We will not be cowed. We will not be silenced by anybody. We are the British people, and we want a common-sense government back in charge of our country. We're going to fight for it, and we are going to win. We're going to win. We are going to win. Political protest is fine. I don't mind people shouting things out at me. I can just about live with the odd egg, that's all right. But masked people outside tonight, threatening and intimidating you, Cornish members of the public, is not good enough, and all the warnings were there online before. Everyone knew what was going to happen, except it would appear the local police. And I will be writing to the acting chief constable to say, stop looking at what people say online and allow democracy to flourish in Devon, Cornwall and the whole of the West Country. Now, since the last election, it would appear we're doing really rather well. Which means that the Prime Minister has decided he will open up the attack guns on reform, or perhaps more accurately, on me. He delivered a speech in Scotland just yesterday, saying that we were right-wing. Perish the thought. Didn't call us far right, which rather surprised me, but that will come in time. He said that his way was the way for people to have good, well-paid jobs. Well, it was the Conservatives that started it, but Labour that have continued. But the net zero madness is closing down factories, is closing down industry on a scale we couldn't have even believed. Today, it's the mini plant at Cowley that employs 3,500 people. Before that, it was 1,100 jobs going at Luton. And the reason is simple. The Labour and Conservative governments have said, you must buy electric cars. Do you want to buy electric cars? Thank you. There we are. Are you watching, Prime Minister? We have closed most of our chemical industry. We have closed all of our aluminium smelting. We only have one primary steel plant left in the whole of the United Kingdom. And even if we surround, as they plan, the whole of Cornwall with these godforsaken, pig-ugly windmills, it will still only provide a fraction of the jobs. Starmer will close down the North Sea. Miliband will make sure your bills go higher. And the greatest lie Labour told at the election is that your electricity prices would fall by £300 per household. Remember that? We'll find out tomorrow what the increases will be. So I will not be lectured by this Prime Minister about well-paid jobs. And I won't be lectured by either of them about the benefits of mass immigration. They're coming in to do jobs. Do you know of the last 3 million that came into Britain from outside of Europe during the Conservatives' period in office, only 22% are working. The rest have come in as dependents, and it's making everybody in this country poorer, and nobody has the courage to stand up and say it. But a reform government will stop this massive population increase in this country, will get British people back to work, and anybody that arrives via a dinghy on the English Channel will never, ever, ever be allowed to stay in our country. And we will do it by facing up to the truth. I mean, can you believe that one person couldn't be deported because his kid liked chicken nuggets? We will leave the European Convention on Human Rights and restore the sovereignty of this country. And meanwhile, Brexit voting Cornwall has been betrayed not just by a Conservative government in 2019 that never believed in it, but used it for political opportunity, but now Starmer, who is crawling back towards the European Union, signing us up to EU food standards, to be overseen by the European Court of Justice, on the verge of signing us up once again to the free movement of people of anybody under 30. I gave up the best years of my adult life to campaign for this country to leave the European Union and to get back its sovereignty. And all those years that I led UKIP, everybody told me I was wasting my time. I was whistling in the wind. Well, they used a rather ruder term than that, but never mind. But you know what? Through the hard work and persistence of that grassroots movement, we didn't just force a referendum, we won an historic constitutional referendum, the biggest fundamental change to our country in 300 years. And I was proud to stand in Parliament Square on the 31st of January 2020 and to do the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 1. Fireworks. We're out. We're independent. We have got our country back. I was proud of that. And yet, has it been delivered? Has it hell? Have Cornish fishermen felt the benefit of us leaving the European Union? There are more French, Dutch and Belgian boats fishing up on our 6-mile line than there ever were as members of the European Union. Our fishing fleets are put under by the MMO and the MCA, levels of regulation never seen before. And I say this as I have a family member involved in the fishing industry in your great county. Are our farmers better off? Outside the European Union? No, with Labour's relentless and now merciless attack on all of those that live in our rural communities. We have been let down. We have been betrayed on Brexit But it's even worse than that. The truth of it is that our country is in deeper trouble than anybody in public life even cares to admit. We are in economic decline as the average folk get poorer. We are in societal decline as violence, knife carrying, shoplifting. You can go nick 200 quid and not get prosecuted. We're going down the tubes. This is even worse than it was back in the mid-1970s. And if this is not arrested, if this is not turned around, this within a decade will be a country that is not worth living in. And I think, as I'm sure many of you do, about those that went before us, those that built this incredible nation, that did the most remarkable things. Those that went before us, look at every village in Cornwall with its war memorial. Think about those that paid a massive price so that we could live as free people. I fear and I feel, as I guess many of you do, all of this is being given away. And that is why, despite over a quarter of a century campaigning for a cause that I was told I could never win, but did, and then enjoying a few years of semi-retirement, not having to work 7 days a week, not being pilloried by the press, enjoying myself enormously on GBNews. But I thought last summer, I just cannot stand by and watch this useless, gutless, inexperienced political class surrender everything. Think about it. We've now got a cabinet of 25 men and women, not one of whom has ever worked in private business. Not one. We have a chancellor. Dubbed by our comic, our northern professional comic, who's given it up to become an MP, Lee Anderson, who dubbed her Rachel from accounts, who tells us she spent 10 years as an economist at the Bank of England. Now we know it was 4.5 in customer complaints. Is it any wonder we're in such trouble? And a business secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, who's never had a proper job in his life, who tells us he's a solicitor when he's never been qualified, which is a criminal offence. And I can tell you tonight that there will be a private prosecution brought against Jonathan Reynolds. On the big international picture, Keir Starmer is off to the White House on Thursday. Much will be discussed, including the wholly unnecessary surrender of the Chagos Islands. We own them, yet we're prepared to pay £52 billion over the next 99 years to give it away. I hope Trump tells Starmer, Lord Hermer, and this bunch of human rights lawyers who seem to hate our country where to go. On Ukraine, it's the 3rd anniversary of an horrendous war. 1 million battle casualties. Men living in trenches, behind barbed wire. It's almost hard to believe 106 years on, but it's just like the Western Front. At least Trump is attempting to negotiate peace, and I welcome and applaud that and believe that, as a principle, is the right thing to do. But what is important is that Ukraine must have the necessary security guarantees and Starmer needs to make that plain to America. We may have slightly different nuances on this, but the important thing about settling the Ukraine war, about getting peace, is we have to make sure those security guarantees mean that Putin can never, ever do it again. And I hope Starmer comes back from the White House with that agreement. But whilst we are, on the one hand, the most realistic about the mess this country's in, and frankly, about the pathetic leadership that is given by a Labour Party. I mean, they're also bloody miserable, aren't they? And a Conservative Party that has completely and utterly lost its way, with a leader who appears to be lazy, with a leader who comes up with bizarre conspiracy theories about our membership, our live ticker. Have you seen the live ticker? I'm obsessed with it. Today we've gone through 214,000 paid-up members. Now, the Tories are a waste of space. Kemi's hopeless. They're going to fall off a cliff electorally. Indeed, it's happening already. And we now, in the last few weeks, we are now topping every single opinion poll in this country. What an amazing achievement. But we have to convert theory into reality. I am here in Cornwall tonight to deliver to you this message. At the last general election, across the 6 now parliamentary constituencies, all of which were Conservative, 4 of which are now Labour, 2 of which are now Liberal Democrat. We scored 16.6% of the vote on the 5th of July last year. An average of the latest polls in Cornwall puts us over 25% and says that if there was a general election tomorrow, Reform would win St Austell and Newquay and Cornwall South East. How about that? But the first step to Reform taking Cornwall happens on the 1st of May this year. That is when we get the Cornwall Council elections. 87 seats up for grabs. Looking at the polling and the numbers, most of those seats will be 3 or even 4-way marginals. If we can just get 30% of the vote in those seats, we're going to start to win seats in Cornwall in a significant number. And boy, doesn't Cornwall Council need something different, given they're now in debt to the tune of £1.3 billion. Can you believe that? Can you believe? How on earth, in a county the size of Cornwall, can you have run up a debt of £1.3 billion? Money, by the way, that you, through your council taxes, increasing over the next few years, will be expected to pay back. So we need some voices of common sense on Cornwall Council. We need lots of voices of common sense on Cornwall Council, don't we? But what do we need to do? We need to learn a lesson from the Liberal Democrats. No, we're not going to shoot any dogs or anything like that, don't worry. But the Liberal Democrats work at grassroots politics. We need people not just to join us as you've all done, and thank you. We need people not just to come to Carnbray this evening, braving the vile yobs outside, as you've done.
Okay, that's Nigel Farage there speaking at the Cornwall Conference for Reform UK. We're going to dip back into that when Nigel gets back onto the national messaging, talking now about the Cornish situation. Let's pick up my panel now, Nigel Nelson and Gawain Towle, about some of the big points coming out of what Nigel Farage just said, and the big line that made all of us gasp, quite frankly, is I can confirm tonight, Nigel Farage said, that there will be a private prosecution against Jonathan Reynolds. He said Jonathan Reynolds has never had a proper job. Of course, Jonathan Reynolds, the Labour Party minister. A private prosecution against Jonathan Reynolds, Nigel Nelson, on the grounds of him saying he was a qualified solicitor, which he said in chamber, when he never qualified as a solicitor. That's a huge line, Nigel Nelson.
That was the top line that came out of the speech so far, certainly. Politicians, whoever they are, they shouldn't tell porkies about their past. I mean, that's quite clear.
Seems to be something of a theme with the Labour Party.
Well, whether or not a private prosecution would work in a situation like this, I don't know. I mean, that certainly what Jonathan Reynolds said, and you're absolutely right, he said the same thing within the House of Commons.
And that's a defence to claim something that's not true on the floor of the Commons.
Yeah, you have to be misleading the House, which is slightly different on a matter of policy.
Well, if you're pretending you've got a job when you haven't, that's misleading the House, surely.
It's a complicated area to actually do him for that, but certainly it was an untruth, and that's the important thing. It was untrue. So I don't know if a private prosecution will work. It may well work, and if it does, I would think that Jonathan Reynolds will be pretty uncomfortable tonight.
Gawain Towle, we've already had talk of one by-election today in Runcorn. Might there be another one in the offing?
Hello, Staleybridge. Let's have a see. But I doubt very much that Reform and Farage would have said that unless their lawyers had looked at it very closely to see if it could work, and they're confident that it could work. And it's not just what he said in the House. It's what he said in his LinkedIn. It's what he said here, what he said there. And to hear as the defence that Labour have thrown up, he misspoke. He misspoke an awful lot of times. I mean, how many times does one misspeak until one is a liar? And that, I think, in this case, he was. Pumping CVs, as Martin said, is something of a habit of this party, of this government. And these are senior people. These are people who are supposed to be looking after the interests of the businesses of this country. And they clearly don't know what they're doing.
Nigel Nelson, it is fair to say now, the best part of a decade was 4.5 years from Rachel Reeves. I qualified as a solicitor and worked as one in Manchester when he didn't. This is getting to be a habit, and it's getting to be hugely embarrassing.
Well, it's 2 cabinet ministers, certainly. I'm not sure it's quite a habit yet. There are 25 cabinet ministers, so...
We'll see.
Well, I suppose we will. Again, Rachel Reeves shouldn't have said what she did. And it applies to all politicians. You ought to be honest about your past, because it does have an effect on the public trust in your future. In Rachel Reeves' case, of course, there wouldn't be a private prosecution on this because there's no suggestion of any illegality.
Yes, I mean, the difference is it's just a lie. Whereas in the case of Reynolds, being a solicitor is a position of trust authority in itself, and therefore that is why it is protected under law. You can't pretend to be an army officer, you can't pretend to be a police officer, and you sure cannot pretend to be a solicitor, because that is a protected characteristic.
Nigel Nelson, can I bring another line in there, clearly aimed at the Labour Party and previous incumbents Conservatives, saying we have been betrayed on Brexit, but it's even worse than that. Nigel Farage said we are in economic decline. Violent crime is spiralling. This is even worse than it was in the 1970s. And here's a line that really stuck out to me. If this is not arrested, then in a decade, this will be a country that is not worth living in.
I have to say that part of the speech sounded like something someone from AFD would say.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean is that Nigel Farage's speech so far has run through what was largely an AFD manifesto: anti-climate change, let's have stronger policing.
That's been our manifesto since before Farage's manifesto, since before the AFD existed.
Maybe the AFD licked it off you.
You can't say that.
So, I mean, whether or not, it's a value judgment, isn't it? Whether you actually say that our country won't be worth living in 10 years. It's something you say in a speech. It's not something that certainly I would say.
I wonder if a lot of people actually do believe that, though, Gawain Towle.
I think sadly, more and more people do. Why? It's because they look around them and see the collapsing standards on all sorts of levels. And it's not just it's not just the crime, though there is the crime. It's not just the jobs, though it's not just the housing prices, though there is that. It's the potholes, it's the this, it's the that, everything. The trains don't work. They just don't. I take the train regularly. Well, I'd like to, but often can't. This is just everything. Everything is not as good as it could be. Not as good. Do not we all, and I'm sure Nigel agrees, the purpose of politics is to leave the country better than you found it, so that your children and your grandchildren can enjoy what you enjoyed, but better. Nigel, that has not been the case recently.
Nigel, can I bring in another point, and that was masked Antifa thugs, as Nigel Farage called them, were outside the conference at the start, and Mr Farage said, let me set a message out there. We will not be silenced by anybody, not by two-tier Keir Starmer, his words, not mine. We will not be silenced. We are going to win. I tell you this, we are win. Isn't this a bit rich as well, coming off the back of those comments about it is the Reform Party who are dangerous? Nobody from the political right protests outside the Labour Party conference to stop them gathering. Nobody from the political right points out that it's the left wing who are actually the masked thugs. The rhetoric, the narrative is that the left wing are good, proper and holy. Their politics is virtuous. But it's the left wing who are protesting against Farage. Zara Sultana I mean, this is not the politics of decency. How can the left say that it's Reform who are dangerous when they're the ones who are acting dangerously?
Well, I mean, first of all, the Antifa people are not Labour people, so...
Well, they're left wing, though.
They're left wing.
Well, just because somebody is left wing or far right or whatever doesn't mean you throw them all into the same bucket.
No, the Prime Minister does. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, called anybody who protests about immigration or all Southport riots as far right. So why can't we say anybody outside...
Well, hang on, you're conflating a number of issues there.
It's far left.
A lot of the people who were protesting over Southport in the immediate aftermath of that tragedy were far-right people.
A vast majority of them were just ordinary people who were really upset.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure. The ones who are actually throwing stuff, trying to burn...
No, but the vast majority were. That's a tiny minority of an upset majority.
None of these seem to struck me as actually ordinary people.
No.
Ordinary people don't do things like that.
Agreed. However, that was a tiny minority of a demonstration of a lot of upset about what happened. But
this was rioting. This was actually...
Yeah, I agree. Those rioters, done. They're rioters.
But no one minds a peaceful demonstration, the same way that I'm happily prepared to condemn the Antifa people who are outside...
Will the Prime Minister condemn the hard left, do you think? Or is his criticism only reserved for the far right?
No, I mean, the Prime Minister would not be in favour of what Antifa are doing outside.
But he wouldn't be in favour of condemning them.
When will he come out and say, everybody who attended that protest last night...
I'm not a Labour Party spokesman, so I can't tell you that.
But the point is this, it's one of double standards. A few people took part in a riot... Everyone is far right.
And quite right.
I'm convinced that Keir Starmer would condemn any political violence wherever it takes place and whoever is doing it. So I have no doubt he would condemn Antifa.
I will tell you why I'm not convinced about that. I will tell you why I'm absolutely not convinced about that. During the BLM riots, he took the knee. He didn't condemn. I'm sorry, he doesn't condemn hard left violence. He actually takes the knee to it. Well, that's absolutely outrageous. For our Prime Minister...
Now we're conflating something else.
You say he condemns all violence. No, he doesn't condemn all violence.
You're running through every demonstration we've had in this country.
He took the knee to BLM. BLM were involved in rioting and smashing things up. He didn't condemn that. So when you say that he will condemn all violence, no, he chooses which violence to condemn.
The principle of Black Lives Matter, taking the knee is a reasonable thing to do if that's what you choose to do. I wouldn't have chosen to do it.
They were hard-left Marxists. The political backbone of BLM has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt.
And corrupt, and all the rest of it.
Marxist ideology.
But the point is, you said that he would condemn political violence.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
Well,
when it came from people that he was kneeling to, he didn't condemn it.
Yeah, but what you're conflating there is the fact he actually took the knee was in some way agreeing with the political violence that was created. That seemed to be the
political violence was going on by a group of things that he took the knee to. How else could you describe it? I don't understand.
Do you think that taking the knee to BLM condemned them?
No, I mean, I think that what he was actually doing was that he was accepting...
He was virtue signalling. That's what he was doing.
Of BLM and the values of BLM.
Which were corrupt and communist and Marxist and destructive.
Not all of it was.
Oh, but all the people... You've just told me but you've just told me that all the people were...
family people.
No, I didn't. I said the rioters weren't. But a lot of people involved were decent. Agreed. But But anybody involved in those demonstrations are dismissed as far right and hard right by this Prime Minister. However, he took the knee to hard left people.
He was talking about the rioters who were many of which were far right. They'd come from
when there were riots after the Mark Duggan thing, and there were riots all over London. What was the thing the government did? Immediately, why are people rioting? Let's look after them. Let's talk to them. Let's worry about their concerns. When the people kicked off after Southport, they're all far right, bang them up, lock them up, chase around the country for dodgy Facebook posts. It's a massive difference.
No, but what we had in Southport was the danger of an insurrection.
There was a pretty dangerous insurrection when they were burning down Clapham Junction and torching that big shop in Croydon.
Yeah, but we can now go back over all the riots that have taken place in this country over the last 50 years.
But Starmer doesn't condemn all rioters.
I think that's the point, gentlemen. We have to move on. But the point is, Sir Keir Starmer didn't condemn the hard left riots of BLM at any point. He didn't, and you're absolutely right, after the Tottenham riots, although he did open the courts 24 hours to bang those people up to be fair, he didn't. His reaction was, let's understand the community, let's sit down with them, a conversation that never, ever has once happened with the white working classes. That's the point, gentlemen. We have to leave it there and move on. A lively and spirited debate coming up next. The German election fallout continues with the Alternative for Deutschland, AfD, making serious gains, and Olaf Scholz's party suffering their worst result in decades. What's next for Germany and indeed Europe? That's next.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews travel destinations forecast.
Hello, welcome to your winter sun forecast. Sunshine and showers for many with snow over the Alps and feeling less cold in Greece. Plenty of sunshine across the Canary Islands, feeling pleasant here, highs of 19 degrees. There'll be sunshine and showers elsewhere, falling as snow over the Alps, and across Greece, temperatures are going to be rising with temperatures up to 13 or 14 degrees. Looking ahead then, plenty of sunny spells, a few showers are still around and feeling pleasant in that sunshine.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews travel destinations forecast.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Into tomorrow, we can expect some more sunshine, but also a fair few showers. These could be heavy and thundery at times, but temperatures will remain above average for the time of year. And the most frequent showers often in the far northwest, where we see some occluded features moving through. Also a fair few isobars on the charts. This means it's going to be fairly blustery across the northwest to start the evening, but eventually winds will ease away. Still plenty of showers moving through here though, and still plenty of showers crossing southern counties at times. Elsewhere, there's going to be plenty of dry weather overnight, even some clear spells where temperatures may just dip away, perhaps even some patchy frost across the north by the morning. Most towns and cities, though, remaining above freezing and largely dry for many areas, but quite a different story across western parts of Scotland. Still plenty of showers moving through here, merging into longer spells of rain at times. And once again, these could be heavy, perhaps even bring a sprinkling of snow across higher ground. Fairly similar across Northern Ireland, a fair few showers moving into coastal regions and similar towards coasts of northwestern parts of England. But elsewhere, a largely dry start away from the far southeast, though, where we could just see some longer spells of rain through the morning, once again turning a little bit heavy at times. This will eventually clear away and we'll see a continuation of the showers moving through into the northwest, and for a time there's going to be lots of dry weather around, but into the afternoon a fair few showers once again bubbling up across the rest of England and Wales, and still a little bit breezy around northwestern coasts, but elsewhere lighter winds, plenty of dry weather and also some sunshine, and a slight dip in temperatures compared to today, but still above average for the time of year, highs around 10 to 11 Celsius. A different story on Wednesday, another unsettled day ahead, longer spells of rain skirting their way eastwards across the country, heavy at times, once again bringing in a risk of thunder and turning into quite a windy day too, particularly around exposed coastal areas, but high pressure building towards the end of the week, which means lots of dry weather on Thursday and Friday and even some sunshine, but it will be turning cold overnight with some morning frost.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody.
in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back now. The fallout from the German general election continues. It was a fantastic night for the centre-right CDU, which won the most seats and bagged just under 30% of the votes, whilst the Alternative for Deutschland AfD made huge gains and just doubled their votes to over 20%. Well, to find out what this means for Germany and the rest of Europe, I'm now joined by the Alternative for Deutschland member of the European Parliament, Markus Bochheit. Markus, welcome to the show. So the AfD made huge grounds, but there could be a coalition of chaos keeping you from the reins of power.
Yes, indeed. Well, it has been a historic victory. It has been historical, the results of yesterday, in various respects, because not only were we very, very successful, we doubled our results. You already mentioned it. It was also that the Socialist Party reached their worst results since 1890, so in 135 years. And, well, you clearly see a shift in power there. You see a shift of people going towards the right wing. They want results now. They don't want any more ideological polemics as they heard the last 3 years. So we are quite happy with the result right now.
The centrist party have promised to get tough on border control, promised to get tough on deportations. Do you think they are good for their word, or are they simply talking hot air?
No, I mean, they had their campaign now. They needed to make big promises in order to achieve these, well, the results they got in the end. But I think they are unable to do what they promised there, because look at their coalition partners. They need to go together with the Socialist Party, a party that is very weak indeed. But nonetheless, there will be a lot of left-wing politicians in the upcoming Bundestag among the rows of the Socialist Party there. And it could become even worse. We shall see if they don't make, in the end, even the Greens member of the upcoming government. But I see no change in our politics, and I see no possibility for the CDU to make their promises come true, and especially to do something against illegal migration.
OK, Markus, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. But now we are crossing to Washington, and there is President Trump. OK, we don't appear to have any audio on this. We're working on that now. But, of course, Donald Trump has welcomed President Macron to the White House. We're expected to have a broad-reaching conversation around Ukraine, future of defence. Will the bromance prosper, or will Donald Trump be meting out some serious messaging to President Macron? Let's bring in now Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, who has joined me while we struggle to get that connection with President Trump. Let's turn to President Mogg instead. Welcome to the show. Can I quickly ask you, if we could, about the line that broke from Reform Party UK leader Nigel Farage earlier, the private prosecution against Jonathan Reynolds. I wanted to ask you, as well as a private prosecution, is there any offence committed by Mr Reynolds for saying in chamber that he had been a solicitor when, in fact, he never qualified?
There is absolute parliamentary privilege for anything you say on the floor of the House of Commons. It may not be questioned in any court or place outside Parliament. That's in the 1689 Bill of Rights. But he could be dragged before the Privileges Committee in the way Boris Johnson was.
Michael Waltz and Special
And I think we do have audio now from Donald Trump. Are we going back to Washington to hear him? Or we are doing that now. Let's go to Donald Trump speaking live in Washington.
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the King and Mohammed, great people. They're really working hard to get this done. Our focus is on achieving a ceasefire as soon as possible and ultimately a permanent peace. My meeting with President Macron today was another important step forward in that sphere, because he's been very much involved right from the beginning in trying to get it over with, and we're going to get it done. I believe that Emmanuel agrees with me on many of the most important issues. Chief among them is this is the right time It may be the only time, you know. That's a very interesting and horrible situation, and that could evolve into a third world war. We're not going to let that happen. Should have never started, but it did. And what a mess, what a horrible, bloody mess. I'm also pleased that President Macron agrees that the cost and burden of securing the peace must be borne by the nations of Europe, not alone by the United States. And Europe must take that central role in assuring long-term security of Ukraine, which they want to do. And that's not a very big step. A big step is what's going to happen over the next few weeks. The United States has put up far more aid for Ukraine than any other nation. Hundreds of billions of dollars. We've spent more than 300 billion, and Europe has spent about 100 billion. That's a big difference, and at some point we should equalize. But hopefully we won't have to worry about that. We have other things happening that maybe take that out of the realm of necessity. And while we've given vast amounts of military aid and money in form of grants, much of Europe's contribution has been economic relief structured as loans for which they'll be repaid. Like the Europeans, I believe that taxpayers in the United States also deserve to recoup the colossal amounts of money that we've sent. The previous administration never even thought of that. They didn't think of a lot of things, like why did they let it start in the first place? That is why we must have an agreement with Ukraine on critical minerals and rare earths and various other things as security. And I think that that's happening. I think we've made a lot of progress. I had a report just given to me before walking in that we've made, Emmanuel, a great deal of progress toward getting that. I've been elected by the American people to restore common sense to Washington and indeed to the world. And I believe strongly that it's in the best interest of the United States, the best interest in Europe, the best interest of Ukraine, and indeed the best interest of Russia to stop the killing now and bring the world to peace. My administration is making a decisive break with the foreign policy failures of the past administration and, frankly, the past. I ran against a very foolish foreign policy establishment, and their recklessness has led to the death of many, many people. Under our administration, we're forging a new path that promotes peace around the world. And when I left office for the first administration, first term, we had no wars, we had no problems. We didn't have October 7th with Israel. We didn't have Russia and Ukraine going at it. We didn't have the problems in other parts of the Middle East. We didn't have inflation. It was a whole different world. And you know what else we didn't have? Millions of people pouring through our borders, many of them criminals released from other nations and put right into our land, murderers and drug dealers, gangs. We didn't have any of that. It's a different time, but now we have it and we're fixing it. We'll fix it all up. We'll get it done as quickly as possible. And we've made a great deal of progress. People are saying it was the best month for a president in our country's history. I hope that's right, but I feel it's right. We've done a lot of things in a very short period of time, 4 weeks. As I've said before, it's my hope that my greatest legacy, however, will be as a peacemaker and a unifier. I want to bring peace, not war. I thank President Macron for joining us today in this urgent work we're doing. And we have some wonderful people up front right here that have worked so hard. Steve Witkoff, thank you very much. And Michael Walsh, thank you. Scott, thank you very much. And JD, thank you. They've really done a job. They worked very hard. It's a real passion to get this war ended. And I'd like to now invite Emmanuel to say a few words, and then we'll take questions. And again, Emmanuel, it's a great honor to have you with us at the White House. Thank you very much, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, dear Donald. Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, je vais dire quelques...
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be saying a few words in French. Thank you very much, Mr. President, dear Donald.